Hey everybody, I am here with Jose Tejada, aka, how do you pronounce it properly? Is it Yotego,
Well,
Hotego, Jotego?
it is Jotego.
Okay, I've been.
It's actually
Mhm.
like my name. It's Jose Tejada Gomez. The first two letters of each part of my name. So
Oh, that makes sense. I should have picked up on that. I always try to get everybody's name right, and I'm notorious for getting them wrong. And I try really hard to get everybody's name right, though, but I'm bad at pronouncing things. So. Okay, well, Hotego. For anybody that doesn't know, you are the person who has created some pretty amazing FPGA cores for all of the different platforms out there, such as Mister, Mist, and a few others that I wasn't even aware of until I started following you on Patreon, actually. So it's first of all, just thank you for your contributions. This is all really awesome.
thank you, thank you. This is quite exciting to me actually to be here in your podcast. It's quite an honor.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I've wanted to talk to you for a while now, actually, and I just it was my life just got crazy busy, but I'm trying to make time to talk to all the people I'm a big fan of nowadays, and really get get the word out there. So I guess we're also celebrating kind of a giant milestone because I believe just last night you had a public release of the CPS 1.5 core with Q Sound built into it, right?
Yes, it's been hard. It's been hard to get up to here, and I was quite relaxed after I pulled the trigger yesterday and I got the files up in the server.
Yeah, I haven't had time to do a lot of testing with it, but I did play Punisher, and it was really
Oh,
cool. It was very cool to do.
that's great. Yeah, it and the music is so good. I wasn't expecting like the guys. They really got good composers for this game. So it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I found that I was just doing a video about the CPS2 kit, and I was trying to find some music to open the video with, just like I always do. And I
Mm.
was really impressed at how Capcom spent a lot of time getting good music in some of those arcade games, which is surprising because a lot of time in the arcade environment, it's loud, it's noisy, people are yelling, you almost can't hear the
Yeah,
music. So it was really cool to see how much effort they put into getting good music in them.
it did. Yeah.
So, how did you even get started doing this stuff? Do you do FPGA things for a living? Is this just a hobby for you?
No, no. Like I'm an electronics engineer.
Hmm.
So I work for analog devices as my regular work
I didn't realize that.
job.
That's cool. I use a lot of their chips.
So, oh really?
Hmm.
Well, yeah. Well, it's thank you. and the what I do there, I'm actually an analog design engineer. So I do like filters, like well, not really filters, like amplifiers, voltage regulators. Uh, yeah, pretty much any analog stuff that has to go into one chip. And modern chips have, they all have a mixture. They all have a digital section and an analog section.
Hmm.
So, so I so you always see the digital section like like the other guys, like the guys in the other room. We talk together, we do things together, but I normally don't do any digital design in the office. And so I wanted to experiment with that too, and that it's kind of what got me involved here. Like I found the schematics for Ghosts and Goblins, and I thought, oh my god, I mean, all the information is here. Like you can recreate this without tampering with it, without imagining things, and that got me started.
So that was the first core that you'd done?
As yes, that was the first core. It wasn't the first kind of job. I actually started with a sound chip from Yamaha
Hmm.
because I saw the Mist. The Mist was, it's an earlier FPGA platform.
Hmm.
And I got one and I thought that all the cores were already done. And when I got it, I found that there weren't many cores out there. So I thought I could contribute by making a Yamaha sound chip core so other people could use it for their own cores. And I made it, but no one was actually using it. Like no one was writing cores. And then, but because I had done that, I got contacted to do the sound for the Genesis core.
Hmm.
And once I did that one, that one was used in in Mister Mist in And once I did that one, that is kind of the same chip as the one used in Ghosts and Goblins. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to add the video part to this, so then we have the full core.
Mm-hmm.
And I made that, and Smoke Monster made a video about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe this is more popular than I thought. Maybe it's worth spending time doing this.
That's really cool. Yeah, I that's the first introduction to you was when you would contribute to the Genesis core. That's the first time I had heard your name, and I've kind of been following you ever since, and all the work that you've been contributing. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
So the MD Fourier team has really done a deep analysis on that core as well, and it's incredibly accurate to the original. And in fact, I think in Mister at the moment you could switch between the different audio chips of the Genesis 1 and then the rest of the models, and it's really accurate, and it's a very cool experience. So
Yes, sounds quite good.
yeah, so then you did Ghosts and Goblins, you did that one, and then you moved on to a couple of other of the older boards as well. I'm trying to remember the fighting game that you did. I don't know why it's slipping me. Maybe my coffee hasn't kicked in yet. But
fighting game.
The beat 'em up game.
Oh, Double Dragon? Could it be Double Dragon?
Could be. There was a few that I saw you work on, though. One of them, I think I have the board that I won when you did the raffle giveaway.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. That was such a coincidence. I wasn't expecting, the winner to be someone I knew.
Yeah, it's a lot of people thought it was fixed, and I was like, no, I was even retweeting. I wasn't even retweeting to enter. I was retweeting just to give you more, just more exposure. But it's funny that one. I mean, maybe it's not funny, but that box ended up getting destroyed in shipping. It was completely submerged in water at one point. So the board's warped. So I'm actually glad that I got it and not somebody else, because I have friends here that could help me restore that and fix it, so it won't go to waste. Actually, my friend Jose, who lives in New York here, I've already asked some help. He had me try a few things, and we're gonna bring it back to life, just because I don't like to see things go to waste like that. So
yeah,
that's cool. But
thank you.
What was the name of that game again? I don't know why.
That one is not Trojan. Is Tiger Road.
Tiger Road. There we go. I have no idea why I forgot that one, but
it has beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
Like Aquas has been playing a lot lately to that game. Like he's been beating it, like trying to to push the time limit to finish earlier and earlier.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. So where did you go from there then? You did Genesis Core, Ghosts and Goblins, Tiger Road, and then it was a very quick ramp up to the other boards.
Yes, I started doing boards for which I had schematics and there were no custom chips, because then, everything is out there, so you can understand everything. And at some point, Capcom started introducing more custom chips, but if you come from the older boards, you can more or less know what to expect inside that custom chip. So then, okay, they have embedded here this and that. This is just the integrated version of the other stuff. So I kept, going up the Bionic Commando, 1943, 1942. I did Popeye, but Popeye is a very, very awkward hardware. It's designed in a very strange way. It was quite a bit of a headache, and at that point, I didn't have my workflow as developed as I have it now. So it was a bit painful, and eventually someone else made the core for Mister, and so I stopped maintaining that one. That is the only one that I have stopped maintaining. The other ones I have kept maintaining them. I started with Konami cores too, and yeah, but I was only like releasing one core every 2 months. But at some point I thought that I could do more. I was afraid that if I did more, like patrons would actually not like that, because I was charging per core release. So I was only charging once every 2 months. So I thought maybe if I charge every month now, they are not going to be happy about that.
Generally speaking, when it comes to Patreon, there's always the oddball, but the majority of people, and I mean this in a very nice way, but the majority of people don't care at all. They support you because they want to support you. If you do 1 million cores, or if you do one, if you charge monthly or if you charge per release, most people just don't care. They pay what they can, which is very often $1, which is awesome. That's fine too. But they just kind of sit back and say, all right, I can't wait to see what you do next, do your thing. And, that's why if you notice, you have your average Patreon account has a lot fewer comments than they do subscribers, because most people, like for me personally, I turned off notifications on almost everybody just because my inbox was always getting filled. So I usually don't even see things until they hit public, and I don't even care. I'm just glad I get to support all the people that I'm big fans of. So no,
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, and just for everybody, I always give this disclaimer. We're doing this over Skype. There's a big delay between, Spain and New York City. And, we're so there's going to be stepping on each other at some points. My apologies. But I was going to ask, you said something before that kind of clicked in my brain, because you're a musician as well, right?
Well, yes. I mean, not professionally.
But you do play. So you said when you were getting used to the older chips in Capcom and you started to take a look at the newer ones, you kind of knew what to expect. And that kind of reminded me of when I was a kid. I always loved all kinds of music, but heavy metal was my favorite because guitar players, I mean, it's the most fun for that. And actually what you play are my two favorite styles. I can't play as well as you, though. But and I remember a new Megadeth album came out, and I started playing along, and I already kind of knew what was coming next, even though it was the first time I had ever heard that song, because Dave Mustaine is the reason I play guitar. So just I'm playing, I'm listening to the riffs, and I just immediately knew where he was going to go. Does it feel the same way when you're reverse engineering these chips, where you kind of know, like, okay, Capcom usually goes to the left here, so I'm expecting this, or something like that?
It does a bit, yes. So there is a big advantage in experience. So the more exposed you are, the easier it's going to get. Except for Nintendo, that Popeye board is completely different. And yeah, there are exceptions. Like the Bubble video system is also very awkward, very, very awkward. And we have it accurate because we have the schematics. But if you look at the schematics, like I normally study the main source code too. Mm-hmm. Because there is a lot of information there. So I try to gather all the information I can. And if you look at the main source code and the schematics, I mean, they are doing the right thing. I'm not saying they are not. No, it's just that you wouldn't imagine one from the other. Because that implementation, though, that circuit is so weird. I don't know who thought, who they had there. But if I had done it starting from zero, it would be compatible, but it wouldn't be the same circuit, because it's just very, very strange.
That's interesting. I see a lot of, now I am not an engineer at all. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I do see a lot of Sega stuff where even as an amateur, I look at it and go, why would they do it that way? Like, you could only imagine a bunch of engineers sitting around a table going, all right, well, we'd like to do it this way, but we have stock of this chip that we need to use, so let's make this chip work instead. And, I have been on a hardware design team before, and I have seen stuff like that in the past, but there's a lot of designs where I'm just looking at the Sega boards going, why would anybody route it that way? It doesn't, it makes no sense. So,
yes, it happens.
So from there, when did you actually start working on the CPS-1 core?
I started, I think it was in January or February this year. Like, I knew there was another developer who had expressed interest in it, and he actually asked me, not to work on it, and I said, okay, I'm busy now, so, but people are asking me about this, so so go ahead, but I'll check back on you in a couple of months maybe. So then when I came back to him, he still hadn't advanced that much, but he still had interest. So I asked him if he wanted to do it together, but yeah, sometimes open source collaboration is not as fun because it's more like a job. Or the thing is that he wasn't very enthusiastic about doing it together. So I said, well, it's okay. I'll do it then. So I think I started in February, and it went pretty quickly, I suppose. Yeah, I think I had a beta in 3 weeks or something since I started. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because it seemed so quick. I was wondering if you had been working on that before then, or if it really did go that quick where you just announced, I'm starting today, and then a few weeks later you had the
No,
beta
no.
out.
No. I actually didn't know much about the system. I just started. There were schematics, but two big custom chips that, one of them was published like a week ago or so. But at the time, there was no information about what they had inside, and then information in main. But I had all the background from Capcom, from the stuff they had made before. Yeah.
So when you go into something like that, especially something with a lot of custom chips on it, you have the main board layout, you have you said you did have the schematics for it as well, right? And
yes.
the basic components like resistors, capacitors, those I'm sure there's already, you could in the tools, there's already just drag and drop for those. But how do you begin the reverse engineering of the custom chips? I mean, do you just start by translating the schematics, or do you have to start probing and testing?
Yes. What people care about, or what I think people care about, is accuracy of the system, but only to the point that you can actually tell. Mm-hmm. Like if you measure the video output from the board and the arcade and the FPGA, and they are the same, then it's not so important how that is done. Okay, so you have some flexibility there. Like for instance, the original systems usually have like a 6 megahertz clock, or a 12 megahertz clock, and then they derive signals from there. Mm-hmm. Whereas I would have a higher speed clock because I need higher speed clocks for SDRAM access, for instance. Mm-hmm. So the systems are always going to have some differences. So what I try to do with the board, with the custom chips, is to pick up on the things that are going to make a difference. Like, for instance, it is important that if the custom chip is locking the CPU from accessing memory, that I get that right, because that is going to affect timing. And that is going to affect how the user feels the game. Like the DMA, the direct memory access in CPS is such an example. Like in emulation, you don't have that. You don't have the DMA emulated. So it's like the system goes way faster because it has the memory at its full disposal all the time. Or also wait cycles. Often when the CPU access memory in these systems, there are some flip-flops, external flip-flops that will pause the CPU for 1 or 2 clock cycles because memories were slower than the CPU. So though that kind of detail makes a difference. And you will see that in the screen, because you will see things may go slower sometimes, and things may happen at a different pace. So that is important. But often it is not important, like the order in which the sprite engine was parsing the ROM file, that you are not really going to see the difference. So for those things, sometimes I do it exactly as the original, and sometimes I just do it in an easier way. Often I do that to interface with the SDRAM in a better way. But I kind of choose, but when it doesn't matter, and when it does matter, when it does affect accuracy, I try to measure it and get it right.
Interesting. I always kind of thought that there's different levels from a player's point of view. There's different levels of emulation. So of course there's just the people that want either the blast of nostalgia, so they remember what it was like to play it, or people who have never played it before that just want to spend a few moments. And from that level, it doesn't really matter how accurate it is. You could play it on your phone and fine. But your average player doesn't want to have anything that takes away from the experience. So lots of variable lag. You press the button now, it's 2 frames. You press the button a second from now, it's 10 frames of lag. Like you can't get your moves right, especially in fighting games. You can't play on your jumps and all that stuff. But it's good enough for the casual user. But then you get into the people that really love these games, and then there's more levels there. Then there's the accuracy of things, and the latency and the look of it becomes a lot more important. And then of course, when you
Yes.
have the fighting game tournaments, that's when it needs to absolutely mimic the original. There's some players out there that are world class that know every glitch of every game. They can, they know exactly how it's going to react, and if it doesn't do it that exact way, it can't be used in the tournaments then. So in my experience with your cores, it's really close to the end. I'm not good enough of a player to have ever be able to really get into that last level of fine detail, but I'm friends with people that are, and they all say that the CPS1 core is excellent. They've all been using it and really enjoy it. So that's pretty impressive.
Thank you. There are still a couple of things that I need to get more accurate, like the DMA might be off by a few microseconds, and I need to get down to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it should be very, very close as it is now.
Yeah, it's I know every engineer is different, hardware, software, whatever, but I know a lot of people that don't want to ever release anything until it's their version of perfect, which is sometimes very unrealistic. And I know a lot of people that definitely release things too early, and I think that you found a sweet spot in that, especially with the Patreon stuff, because you'll release a buggy beta only to Patreon subscribers because that's what a lot of them sign up for. Like, we want to be in the loop, we want to try it, but your public releases are all good enough so that any casual user will have a pretty perfect experience. And then I really like how I've seen you go back and update older cores and really get raise the accuracy. So I really love your stance on that. Like, all right, once it's good enough to enjoy, the public can have it, but even if it's not perfect, I'll go back and work on it when I have time, or when I get more knowledge of the newer chips, I can go back to the older ones. I thought that was really cool. I hope a lot of people take that same stance on all projects, hardware, software, whatever. So
yes, and I think patrons in general have shared that I think that they want to see the new stuff, but they also like to see that the old stuff is not abandoned. That if I find something I can improve, I will go back and improve it. And then the betas, I normally try the beta to be very good. Like I released the bubble without sound because I was asked for, like there was one of the patrons had asked for that core, and he said that he just wanted to check it out, and I said, well, okay, yeah, let's do it without sound. And sometimes I release things because I need to get them off my system,
Mm-hmm.
like in the CPS 1.5, the first beta didn't have sound, but I needed to get it out, because just to get up to that point was quite hard, because even if it doesn't have sound, it has all the elements needed for the sound except the DSP chip, and to get all that logic working together was a bit exhausting. So just publishing it kind of relaxes me.
So I actually wanted to ask you about that. I guess I have two questions about that. Not counting audio, what's the difference in the hardware between CPS 1 and 1.5? And then separately, I wanted to ask about the audio for that.
Yes. Not counting audio, I think they are the same. Yes, I think some No, I think they're the same. It's just the audio subsystem. Some input ports are mapped in a different way, but in CPS1, depending on the game, sometimes you get that too. That you will get extra input ports from one of the C board that they call a small board.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now for the sound, of course, there's been a debate for years of what Q sound actually is. And I remember following a thread that says it's the amp, it's a filter, it's I'm really curious to hear, from you, who's actually reverse engineered it. What is Q sound? Would you be able to explain that?
Yes. Well, it's kind of weird, because you can implement the whole thing without having gone through it, because Q sound is it's a set of software filters that run on a DSP, and DSPs are like very fast CPUs that are designed just to work with data, with real-time data. And so at the time there were other chips like the chip in the Neo Geo that processed PCM data or AD-PCM samples. So these chips would, go to the memory, grab the sample, decompress it, and play it. So this QSound does the same thing. It can do that, and it does it for 16 channels, which is a lot. But it also applies filters, and these filters are supposed to mimic some spatial effects. And there's apparently, if you are in the right setting without signal bouncing of walls or things like that, with QSound they can make you hear only certain things if your head is here, but if your head is over there, you will not hear it. And they were playing these tricks for fun in some games where they hide sounds and things like that. But in general, what they try to do is just to make it easier to locate things in the space. And in some games, like in Warriors of Fate, you can see from the very beginning that the horse is coming from the left and it's moving around. It's basically filters. There is, most of them are digital. There is an analog board with some more filters. I haven't implemented those ones too, but I think that those ones are not important for the spatial location, but I may be completely wrong. And I think that because I see that they only operate on one channel. They only operate on either the left or the right, not on both of them at the same time. So I would suppose that for a spatial location, you need to mix the two signals. A curious thing about the DSP there is that it doesn't rely on any interrupt to know the sample rate. Like normally with sound, you need a tick, because you need to move at this speed.
Mm-hmm.
But that DSP is just, the code is written in a way that it goes in loops, right? It is one forever loop there, getting the samples and getting the data out. And the duration of the loop is exactly the sample rate. And it is almost exactly 48 kilohertz.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. There was so much conflicting data on what that was, but that actually makes total sense now to me. So that's pretty cool. So what is then the difference between that and the QSound that's built into the CPS2? Is it the same sound chips with just the updated other processors?
We think it is exactly the same. I think it is the same subsystem. So getting, like maybe people think, why did you do CPS 1.5? You can skip that one because the big games are in CPS 2. Mm-hmm. But I think it's that it is easier, if to do this system, get the sound working there, and now you do the next step. So at least, you get rewards while you are advancing, rather than trying to go for something very big that is going to take you like 1 year to get working on.
Yeah, I completely and totally agree, both from a development point of view, but also as a fan and as a gamer. The CPS 1.5 boards were very often some of the most expensive, the hardest to find. Yes. The emulation was good on them so far, the software emulation, but it wasn't perfect. A lot of the big fans could definitely tell the difference. So I think this is one of those rare moments that on both sides, the development side and the fans that love the games probably agree that it was a very good move to take the step. Because it's with arcade boards, it's very easy to skip something that may not be as important as another, and it's really good that from all perspectives that we get this. So I'm glad you didn't skip it. I'm glad you went and checked it out as well.
Yes. And I didn't know these games that much, actually. And then when I started playing them, I thought, these are really good games. Like the Punisher, it's not just because of the Punisher character. It's just that the game is a lot of fun to play. It is very well done, and it really feels like you are smashing all these guys. Like,
Yeah, I
I'm
played that last night, and I've played that emulated before. But my friend Beast and I were talking about Cadillacs and dinosaurs as well, and I said I wasn't going to play that until the Mr. Core came out, and I could sit down and play it on a CRT monitor with an arcade stick. I want to have the real experience because I've never played it, so I want to make sure to I get to play it the right way for the first time, so I could see what it's like. So I'm very excited. I might do that later with a couple of beers, sitting down and trying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think your favorite game that, or I guess platform too, but what do you think your favorite game that you've worked on so far is?
Think yes, like I've been surprised by a few titles that I didn't know. Said like I was very surprised with Higemaru. That was an old game from Capcom that I didn't know. I just made it for completeness. It was very easy to do, so I just released it directly to the public. And I was surprised to see how much time I was spending playing it. And I saw that in the Discord channels, people were also playing it. So I thought that, sometimes there are tools there that you don't know about.
Yeah, I find when these days I spend more time testing than I do playing, and I find that if I'm testing a game and next thing you know, 15, 20 minutes has gone by. Like I make a mental note, like, wow, I must really like this game. I only needed 2 minutes worth of footage, and it's 15 minutes later.
Exactly.
So. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
I always try to do that, and I always go back and play my favorites. I remember playing 1943 when I was a kid on the NES with one of those like flight joystick things.
Yes.
And when the core came out, I was really excited to play the arcade version of that.
Yeah, I had to play to the Amstrad CPC version, and I tell you, it's terrible. It's really, if you compare it to the arcade game, oh my god.
Yeah, the NES version was okay. It wasn't a bad port, but it's not like the arcade. Everything, the graphics, the sound, the way it feels, it's definitely arcade is much better.
Yes, yes.
It's funny because many people think the opposite about Contra. Contra, the arcade game, certainly looks better, but a lot of people prefer the gameplay on the NES.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to have an accurate representation now to be able to play that.
Yes, and the Amstrad CPC version of Contra is also better than the arcade. So,
really?
I think the arcade is the worst version in this case. It's just that it is the original. So you want to have the original.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, and there is a funny, missing piece in the Contra puzzle, and it happens in emulation too. We don't know why. That when you go into this kind of 3D levels, and there are barrels coming towards you. So when you play the real board, you get these barrels coming in from the left, from the center, whatever. But they will kind of either they will, each one will follow its way. So if it started on the left, it will go on the left. But when you play the emulated version or the version in FPGA, the barrels will all shift to the right. So it's very, very strange. And we do know that the CPU is accessing registers inside the custom chip, which we don't know what they do at all. And there must be some information missing there because the CPU is deciding to shift the barrels to the right instead of keeping them in their lanes. And Fartech is now working on reverse engineering that custom chip.
Yeah, so I was actually, that was going to be my next question. What's the next step when you see something like that? Do you have to decap the top of the chip and then look at it under a microscope to see what it's doing and how it's made?
Yes, that's the best thing. But an easier thing is that you just write a small piece of software and you execute it on the real hardware and try to get information that way. That is faster. But it is not as accurate because you still will not know if there is any other thing missing. But the problem I have with die shots is that in my day job I see a lot of that because when we make ICs, new chips, we have to draw the schematics, then we have to draw the layout. And I do a lot of layout and I don't do layout myself. I think I haven't done any layout for the last maybe 7 or 8 years. But I kind of have a respect for it that, that it's going to be impossible, because, when I design my schematics and the layout engineer does his layout and he shows it to me, it is my design, and it still requires effort to go and say, okay, this is my transistor, my resistor, my capacitor. And so even if you know everything, a layout is not that easy to understand. So that's why when I see these tie shots, I think, oh my God, I mean, this is going to take forever. So I tried once, but I think it's better if I leave other people to do it who have proven that they can do it and they do it right. And I focus on writing code.
Yeah, I mean that's always the secret to a good formula. Everybody does what they're good at, but everybody communicates. It's the same thing with bands too, right? You don't need to be the best drummer and the best guitarist. Pick one and work together.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So do you work on any of the video amplifier chips and analog devices, analog video amplifiers?
I worked in a long time ago. There were new TV sets coming with HDMI connectors, and it was the first time that was going to be general.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was this big problem with long HDMI cables, because the signal just degenerates very quickly, and you lose it. So I worked in an equalizer for that to degenerate the video signal, and I think that equalizer has been used in a lot of HDMI chips from analog after that. I don't know exactly the part numbers. I could find out, I suppose. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if because I think that Mister uses, I'm not sure, it uses some chips from analog. I'm not sure I think the HDMI one is from analog, so it could have my equalizer in there.
That would be such a coincidence if the Mister's chip used the chip that you had some of your code on. That would be cool. The last analog devices chip I used, we were trying to figure out a way to do an RGB to S-video component and in composite. But with some of the old timings of the old video games, getting it to composite was really hard. It wouldn't work. The colors would be off, whereas TV signals were fine, and some consoles worked, some didn't. The Sega Genesis specifically didn't. So it was pretty neat. We were trying to go through the data sheets and figure it out, and we just gave up because it wasn't the biggest product. It was just kind of an experiment.
But I remember that at the time I was working on that HDMI chip, analog TV was still mainstream, and I remember the manager saying that not only did we have to get the digital TV right, but it was very important to get analog TV at a higher quality than what was available before, because that was kind of our selling point. Like a lot of people can do digital chips, but not so many people can do analog chips. So we had to get the analog part with a lot of care, with the top quality.
Yeah, especially when flat panels started to come out, because even the expensive ones at the beginning, if you had a decent 480i CRT, you could probably notice the difference between a mediocre chip and a really good one. But the moment you have a flat panel, that difference becomes really noticeable. And especially back then, when most of the signals out there were interlaced, and then you're putting them on a flat panel, trying to convert them to progressive. So any of that noise really gets amplified. So it's and in fact, that's why these RGB bypasses that a lot of us do on original consoles, some people think it's ridiculous because they already output RGB, but bypassing it to modern chips that are higher quality with better filters on it, you actually can see a difference, especially if you're going through a 1080p scaler on a 60-inch television or something. So it's kind of funny too, because that would never have even been an issue in the 90s or the 80s. You could never tell the difference on those TVs. But
no, you couldn't.
That's funny. Well, now the next time we get stuck on a project with an analog devices chip, I'll know who to bother.
Yeah, I actually know some of the people who worked on those video amplifiers, but I don't think they would remember anything, right now.
Yeah, it's probably been it has to have been at least 10 years till that's was
Yes.
stopped being made, because the last ones that were made are still fine. There's no reason to update the design.
Like at that time, we were working in Ireland at that time, so part of the video group was there. Like usually groups are are all over the place, but yeah, this and then some of those designers came here to Spain.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think they haven't worked on video since they came here.
So in at your job, I mean, obviously you're working with people around the world, but do you predominantly speak English or Spanish?
Well, in the office we speak Spanish to each other, and even by email. If it is all among Spanish people, it is often written in Spanish. But then, yeah, phone calls it usually involve people from all over the place. So we work a lot with Ireland. There is a very big analog devices center in Ireland.
Hmm.
But yeah, depending on the project, it might be India, the Philippines. Sometimes we get people from the States too. I think in the current project, we only have one person from the United States. But it depends. Sometimes the project is more focused in the United States. But yeah, I suppose I normally work mostly with Ireland.
I'm always fascinated by people who could speak multiple language so well. And some people get offended when I ask them about it. I honestly don't know why. I always mean it as a compliment, but I never learned a second language. I started to learn Mandarin Chinese when I was out in
Oh,
Taiwan for work for a while, but I only was out there for I would go for 2 weeks at a time, a couple times a year. So I got to I was able to order food, find the bathroom, order my whatever beer I wanted,
oh,
but
that's good.
basic, very
Yeah.
basic. Like I couldn't, and almost everybody over there spoke pretty good English as well. So it was always a combination of the two. But I would never,
Yes.
if you drop me in the middle of China, I don't know if I'd be able to make it out. So, but I'm always really jealous of friends that speak multiple languages, and especially my friends that grew up in a house that was bilingual. So neither language they spoke, they have an accent. They don't have when they speak English, they sound like
Mm.
every other American that they grew up around. And like one of my friends, his family was from Cuba, and when he speaks Spanish, he sounds exactly like his parents. So that was always
Yeah.
pretty cool. Every time I try to speak a different language, I sound like a dumb American trying to speak a different language. So it was pretty cool. Did you just learn in school growing up, or was that
Oh, but at the time, I was taught English, but and you, like I remember in secondary school, the English teacher was teaching us new words, and he was just dictating him. He was just saying the words out loud, but we didn't know uh, we didn't know how to write them, how to spell them. So I can only imagine now that looking back, that he was actually pronouncing them as though they were Spanish words. So it would have been the completely wrong pronunciation, but we were writing them correctly.
that's
And
funny?
I think when I decided that I wanted to apply for a job in analog devices, I actually started watching Friends, the TV series.
Hmm.
I knew that if I had a script in front of mine, I was going to be able to understand it, but I couldn't understand what they said at all. Like there was this misconnection between my writing skills and my oral skills.
Hmm.
And I think it's basically Friends and living in Ireland what fixed that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say friends, because each of the characters on that show have completely different mannerisms, slightly different ways of talking. So that at first it must have been frustrating, but after you got used to it, that must have actually been a really great way to learn, because you got to see different ways that people spoke.
Yes, it is actually frustrating because after so many years, like when you get used to somebody's accent, like Joey's accent in Friends, then you can always understand him. But now, if I start watching a new TV series, then at the beginning, I may not understand them well because they might have some peculiar accent. And
That's
no,
very,
no
very
matter.
true. Yeah, I remember when I had that job where I was traveling. I went all over, and the place that I had the hardest time understanding people's accents was a part in the deep south of America where the accent was so thick. I had a harder time understanding than when I was in Taiwan listening to native Mandarin speakers try to speak English. I actually had a much harder time to this one section of the South trying to figure out what everybody was saying, and I felt bad because they were speaking English, but it was such a thick accent. I kept having to say, "I'm sorry, can you repeat yourself? I have no idea what you're saying." So
Yes, no. It was like I had once a housemate from Scotland, and at that time I had already been living in Ireland for 3 years, so I thought that I had decent English. And she started speaking, and I couldn't understand a thing from her.
That's funny. When did you live in Ireland?
I think it was from 2000 to 2004, so it's a long time ago now.
That's cool. I've never been. I think I had a trip scheduled to stop in for a day, but I ended up, because of whatever schedule, I ended up just going to England. But I always wanted to go. That always seemed like a fun place to visit.
It has a peculiar smell. Like you get out of the airport, and I don't know whether it is the grass or the soil, but you know that you are in Ireland.
That's funny. I found that with Taiwan because even though I didn't grow up in New York City, I grew up going there because I lived very close. And in New York City, there's a lot of like fried foods. So you have that, that fried smell a lot when you go down to the street vendors and things like that. And in Taiwan, a lot of the food was boiled in tea. So it had, a distinctive smell when you would go into some of the parts of the cities when they'd have the street vendors and stuff like that. But it's funny you mentioned that. Some places do have a smell to them, and it's kind of neat. If you've never experienced that before, it's a strange thing.
It is.
Yeah, that's really cool. It was funny. I never went anywhere as a kid. My family, I think we went on one vacation to Florida to visit my grandparents, and then I got this job in 2005. 2004-ish. And the second day there, they said, all right, get a passport. You're going to be, you're going to Asia next month. You're going to this place. I'm like, this is awesome.
It is awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Eventually you can get fed up of business travels because it's just, playing, office. But if they give you, like, I actually met Sorgelik, Sorge.
Yeah.
I actually met him in Taiwan because at the time he lives there. He's not he's Russian, but he lives there. And at the time I was on a project with one of these manufacturers in Taiwan. Like I think half of that aisle it's just IC manufacturers. They have these big foundries all over the place. So I had to go there, and I wrote that on my Facebook, and he contacted me, and he said, "Are you here? Because I live here." And I thought, "No way!" I mean, I was expecting him to live
in Russia, yeah.
In Russia, yeah. So he was there, and we met, and it was very good. And some months later, I had to go again, and we met again, and he's quite a good host. He was showing me around.
That's really cool. What part of Taiwan?
He was in Taipei, the capital, but I didn't go there. Like my visit was it's called like Shunsu or something like that. I'm not going to get the pronunciation right, but something like Shunsu.
Yeah, that's cool. I spent most of my time right in Taipei City, but I got to travel around the city and just the outskirts. I got to go to the beach once, but like you said, with business travel, it's very often plane, office, plane, and that's it. But I always found ways to have fun. I always found people that wanted to go out to the bar afterwards, see the city a little bit. So I always made the best of it. I loved it. A lot of people get burned out from business travel, but I never did. I always... I learned to sleep on a plane. I don't sleep that well anyway, so I didn't get any better or worse of a sleep on a plane than I did at home.
It is the same.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So, what do you have your sights on next? What are the boards that you're excited to look at to see if it's even possible to reverse engineer?
Well, I was going to do something in the middle before CPS2, but now that I'm looking at it, I think that maybe I should just jump straight to it because. Like the biggest thing to it was Q-Sound maybe. Now there is this big sprite engine that has to go very fast, but probably that's all about it. So maybe I will do CPS2 then, and then I have to make an inventory because I have some boards that I have on loan, not too many on loan. But I have some boards that were donated to me to work on them, and then I have some requests from directors too, and then there are games that I would like to do myself. So I need to make an inventory and make a kind of a roadmap, something that makes sense from a development point of view, from a release schedule point of view, because I cannot be just working 3 months without releasing anything. I think I would like to keep releasing things at least once or twice a month, if possible. So I need to make things of all these things. One core that I am not supposed to work on, but that I may work on, is the System 16 core.
Oh, wow.
From Sega.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that Mr. X started doing it, and I have told him that it was okay, that I was not going to touch it. But I think that his personal life got a bit complicated, so maybe, I don't know, if I... and there is this game. I would really like to see a Shinobi core in Mr. Yeah. And I have one Shinobi board on loan for too long, maybe over a year. I also want to give it back to the owner. So that is one core that I have in the back of my mind. Other titles, like there is this Nemesis 2 or Gradius 2 core that I received a board also, and I think that one wouldn't be too hard. And then I have been asked about, I don't know if you know it, the IGS polygame system from Taiwan, actually.
Yes, yeah. I actually, Smoke Monster told me to get one of those, and when he, when he said that, I was like, all right, I'm gonna listen. So I picked that one up, and I got one beat 'em up game with it, and I think he suggested a couple of shooters as well that I'll eventually get. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I never knew that existed until he taught me about it.
No, I didn't know either. And then when you check it out, it has good games.
Yeah.
And now there is this debate whether people are here for nostalgia or are here for the games. And I think it's kind of both. I think that there are some games that, have a special meaning to you. But if you see a good game now, I think you can appreciate it. And some patrons have told me that, have told me, I didn't know this game, and I have only played it because you made the core, and now I like it.
Yeah, it's, what I've found in all the videos I've done, all the guides I've written, it's nostalgia is what brings a lot of people to retro gaming, but nostalgia doesn't get past the first level. So, hooking everything up, putting your cartridge in, holding the controller, hearing the title music, and then you start the first level, and if the game stinks, that's it. You're done. It's like, all right, that was fun. I remember this. Goodbye. I'm out. But if the game's good, then nostalgia goes out the window at that point. Now it's just you're into a really great game the same way you would any game, new, old, whatever. And I think it's the same exact way with cars. My favorite cars growing up were made long before I was born. I had no nostalgia for them. I saw one once and went, wow, that's cool. That feels like me. I want to own that one. So it was, I think it's very similar. I guess music too. It's, you don't have to be growing up with music to enjoy it.
Yes, although they know that there is a window for these things, including music and food.
Mm-hmm.
So what you were exposed to at a certain age has a bigger impact, and actually after a certain age it has no impact. And you can see that with music, that people like the music when they were teenagers, but then when they are past their 30s, they are pretty much insensitive to new music coming in. And if they are past their 40s, then it's all about old music.
I've noticed that, and I've always tried really, really hard to not be that person. And who's the best example is Rob Halford from Judas Priest. He's 70 years old, and every time I see an interview with him, he's talking about a brand new band that even I haven't heard of before. He stayed with it, and I always kind of looked at that as like, because I always liked Judas Priest. They weren't my favorite band, but I always looked at that as inspiration. Like, wow, this is the metal god, but he's still checking out new music all the time, even though he's a senior citizen. So it's yeah, I always try to go out, to go based on that. And when I started playing bands, a lot of the newer music I enjoyed were the local bands that we played with. So original music and stuff like that. But I still always try to keep expanding my horizons, and I always try new foods. I always I always try to keep growing. I'm always afraid that once that ends, like what's next. So
Yes. And the funny thing with that is also that for your job, you also you have like this time when you are learning how to do your job, and after that you know how to do it, and you also become a bit insensitive to new ideas in your job, because you already know how to get around, you already know how to solve problems, you don't need to other ways of solving problems, so then you stop learning so much. And the funny thing is that if you move to a completely different job, even if you are not young anymore, then that capability of learning new things just wakes up again. So maybe I kind of think about that for myself, that maybe as an analog designer, I have already my book of tricks, but I don't have one as a digital designer, which is what I'm doing with the FPGA. So for me, it's more about discovery, more about creating all these new workflows and environments to get production done in a timely manner.
Yeah, that's a good point. For me, whenever I need to start from scratch and learn something new, I always procrastinate and delay, and I find an excuse not to do it, and then eventually I go, all right, let me just throw myself in and learn it until I could do it good enough. But there's always that hesitation, and then I just jump in and do my best.
Yeah.
You said something before about releases, and it kind of reminded me of my own schedule, because you were saying you don't want to go a long time without releasing something. You want to keep it going. From the point of view of a fan of your work, no one cares. Do it on your own schedule. We just want to see you do what you want. But as somebody who creates content, even back when I was working at that job doing hardware design, there were a couple of times where 3 or 4 weeks would go by, and we'd have a weekly check-in meeting, and my boss would say, all right, what'd you do? And I said, nothing. I got nothing done. Nothing's released. I feel like a failure. But I mean, I'm working, if I was traveling, it was 12 hours a day. If I was working in the office, it was 8 hours a day. I'm doing stuff every day, but I felt like a failure unless I would get something done. And I still get that feeling with the videos and the articles. So even if I'm working on a very big video that's a lot of production, I always try to stop and put anything out, just so I don't feel like I'm getting nowhere. I feel like, all right, I accomplished this, and I'll go back and chisel away at the bigger goals. So I think you're doing the right thing. If you want to have an easier project, just to have that feeling of completion, like, okay, I'm still doing well. So.
Exactly. Just you need that, and it's also a bit painful when I release something, and I know that I haven't been able to test everything, and then someone comes immediately after and say, "Look, this is not working here," and that is like 5 minutes after you make the release. but that's even if that happens, then it's good to get it out of your system. And especially I do releases on Friday, so even if I keep doing research on Saturdays, it kind of feels like the job is done, and now I can relax.
Yeah, it's funny. I always have that time period, and it's different every time. But if I release a video and then a couple of days go by and one of the comments says, "Hey, I think you made a mistake," and like 5 minutes in, I'll usually go, "Oh, you're right. Thanks for letting me know. Here's why I made that mistake. Cool." But if I release the video and the first comment is, "You made a mistake," it's like, "Oh, come on, watch the rest of the video." Like,
Exactly, yeah. You need that positive feedback, absolutely.
Yeah.
and it's good that people understand too that this is not like a full team in a big company where you have a lot of people doing design verification, which we would call it. We don't have a lot of people doing that. So people are in general understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But still, like we have now with this big problem with the ST RAM.
Right. No, that was actually one of the last things I wanted to make sure to ask before we ended, because I was following your work on that, and you were talking both about the speed differences between the RAM and a new memory controller that you were working on, I believe. Would you mind
Yes.
explaining that? Because I was really curious about all of that.
Yes. Well, I was a newcomer to the SDRAM world when I started working on this, because, as I said, I'm an analog designer, so I don't deal. I know the details, of how the bit cell works, because that's kind of the analog domain. But then how you make the controller, then I didn't know. So when I started working on cores, I needed to access that. So I started with kind of the bare minimum that I needed. And even to get that working was a bit hard at the time. But for CPS1, a bit before that, it started to fall short. So I added cache, a little bit of cache. I started doing a lot of tricks in the core, a lot of smart moves to make it work with a slow memory. But at some point, I just needed more RAM, more speed. Sorry, and for CPS1, I had to raise it to 96 megahertz, the clock speed. So it was twice the old clock speed. And I started having problems with the memory at that time. And the thing here is that I am a bit biased, because of my background in analog devices and in Texas Instruments. When I see the memory module and the socket where we have to plug it in, I think, oh my God, this is not the best thing that because that socket was not meant to be used that way. It's not very high frequency, but 100 megs is, it's already something to be careful when you design boards. And I know that I don't design boards at my job, but there is a team who has to design a board where my chip is going to go, and they're going to measure my chip with their board. So I have to attend the design review for those PCBs. And we say things from the point of view of the chip designer, but then there are also other PCB designers saying things from their point of view and saying, that track is going to be too long, and asking what's the parasitic capacitance here and there. So I'm so used to that formal environment that when I see these things, I may tend to think very quickly that the module is wrong. And at this time, I also think that the module is wrong, that this is not the design that we need. But I really hope that I am the one wrong here. I really hope that there is something wrong in my controller, and there is something that can be done without having to ask people to rework their memory modules, to resolder them or whatever is needed. Yeah, I hope that is the case.
So if I'm understanding all of this correctly, so the biggest problem with Mister is also one of its biggest strengths in that it uses the DE10 Nano, which is cheaper than the main FPGA chip if you're buying them in single.
It is.
So, but you're then working within the confines of what the DE10 Nano can do. So while you're getting this very expensive, very fast chip, you also have to go about certain things a specific way, and it can be very limiting. I remember talking to Risha and to Ash Evans a couple times about, hey, could we do this? Could we build this? And the answer is yes, but how could you make that work right in the DE10 Nano? You don't want to be removing components from that thing at all. You want to use it as a plug-and-play module. So the memory controller or the memory chip that are in there now, luckily they're relatively inexpensive and they're very easy to swap out. So even if you're a non-technical person, if you could use a screwdriver, you could swap that out. Yes. So even if the project evolves and a new memory chip is invented, it's not like it's going to stop people from using the previous cores. It's not like you have to buy a whole new thing. But you're right. It's it's interesting to see if the speed of these things can match the size as well. And I believe, reading your post, it seems that the 64 megabyte and lower module can run at a much faster speed than the current 128 megabyte module, right?
Yes, there is. That's if you try to access several parts of the SDRAM at the same time, you need to use more signals to do it. And those signals were cut and sorted to other pins in the 128 modules. And then I heard that was actually generalized to the other modules too. So even if you have a lower sized module that has been built recently, you are also losing direct access to those signals. And when discussing this with Sorge, he said that from his like he has been running tests before, and he decided that there was not much speed lost. And at the beginning, I was being a bit conservative about not messing, how you access in parallel without these signals. And then after talking with him, I had a better simulation setup then, so it was I could verify very quickly if I was breaking something or not. So then I tried to push it harder, and I got more speed than I had originally. It is still slower than if you could use those signals. I think if you can use those signals, I can get 66% efficiency, which is like 2 out of 3 clock cycles are being used to get data. If I don't use these signals, if it is one of the newer modules, it is only 1 out of 2. So efficiency drops from 66 to 55%. But that is actually better than what I had originally, which was I think was 37 or so. So, and then what's going on with the memories now, if it is something electrical in the end, then even if I can pull some trick to space out signals for CPS 1.5, because there is still a headroom there, I don't need so much bandwidth, memory bandwidth. So even if I do tricks there, and I fix it this time from the FPGA point of view, this is just like kicking the ball forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is going to happen again, because then CPS 2 is going to need more memory bandwidth because it has 900 sprites on a screen. So at some point, if it is really an electrical problem, at some point we are going to have to stop and say, look, we need to design the PCB better, or to improve the way we are soldering the chips, maybe ask manufacturers to do it with machine equipment instead of doing manually. I don't know. We need to debug it. I have asked about information about the PCB parasitics that they do. Yeah, I don't know. And Sorge has offered today to have a look at my controller to see if he finds something there. And as I said, I know that if I spare out the SDRAM access times, it may work for CPS 1.5. But then we'll have the problem for the next core. So maybe it's better if
you said
just
it may work
now.
for CPS 1.5, but I have a 128 megabyte module in mind, and it does seem to work now. So is the reason that it's working now because of the cache that you've built in order to do this, or?
No. I think it should work for most people. Like, I don't have the statistics, but I have like 9 different memory modules at home to run tests, and it only fails for 2 of them. So I suppose it works for most people, but the problem is that there are some people who are not happy now. So we don't like that.
So if this does turn out to be a hardware problem, could it be solved just by a new memory module that has yet to be invented?
Yes, it depends. It depends on what problem it is. If it is, it could be many things. It could be that the second module on the board is creating noise even when you don't use it, because it enters this self refresh state, and that affects the R. It could be what is called symbol interference, because like it seems to happen at a very specific point. So it seems to happen when some data is going through the bus with a history. So then, if it is something like that, maybe we need a new PCB design with maybe wider spacing between the signals. Maybe we need, like as I said, if we were doing this, if this had been done by an electronic engineer, I think it would have been quite different. But that doesn't mean that it cannot work otherwise, because we usually, especially in analog devices, we get things, extremely correct, extremely, with very, very high precision, taking a lot of care about details. But I know that a lot of the time you don't need that.
Right.
And a lot of the time you can get away with much less. So that's why, I have this biased opinion that, it's going to be the module, but maybe I'm completely wrong. So let's see.
That's cool. It's an interesting learning experience. And I've talked to a few people over the years about building a hardware platform for the Mister and trying to find different ways to get it. And one of the biggest concerns was, well, how do we know exactly what we need? So even if we talked to you, we talked to Sorg, we talked to everybody and say, all right, well, let's all decide on this one board. And, I'll talk to a not-for-profit company to have them made so no one's making any money off of this. There's still no exact understanding of what would be needed to cover us for the future. So it's good that there's these bumps in the road now, especially when you're talking about a $50 RAM module that you could very easily just swap out, as opposed to the full kit, all the extra accessories and all that. But I would like someday to see a piece of hardware that we could call Mister or whatever the project name is. And one company did actually contact me and said, hey, how do you think about this? Like, we're going to make it, we're going to have it for next year. And then they asked me to ask Mister engineers to work for them for free. I just deleted the email. I didn't even like, oh, get out of here. No, absolutely not. So, it would be different if it was a not-for-profit company that says any profit we make is just going to go back into making new products and we're going to sell them at cost. That would be different. I would actually think that a lot of the Mister contributors would be happy to help, because it's not one person getting rich off of other people's work. It's just allowing a hardware platform for the community to have. But that was not the case. This was a big company that just wanted to make money off of free work from other people. So I just get out of here. Forget that.
Yeah, and we do put out a lot of source code, and this source code, some companies could make products out of them, and and that's fair, because that's the license. But we do not want that to happen very quickly, because then it really feels like they have used you. But if it happens in like 5-10 years time, then then I suppose I'll be happy about it.
Well, if they did it right, if they submitted all of their changes back to the project like you're supposed to, and if they made a platform that's very easy to use, that works properly, and then they sold that for a fair price. I mean, that's anybody that's ever manufactured and sold something, anything, knows how much work is involved in that and how hard it could be sometimes. So if a company actually stepped up to the plate, did all the hard work themselves, resubmitted any code changes they made, that wouldn't be a bad thing. I imagine some developers might be upset, but it's only when people come in and try to get everything for free, not give anything back, and not even care about the original point of all of this stuff. That kind of gets on my nerves,
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I hate to call them out because this has been beaten to death, but that's kind of what Hyperkin did all those years ago when they stole the emulation code for their Retron 5. I mean, that was against every rule that the community had set for how to work with that stuff, and it was really discouraging to see it approached that way when they could have done the opposite. They could have made the Retron 5 a software emulation open platform for people to use, and people would have loved it. They probably would have sold more, because your average consumer would only care about, can I plug my carts in and use them? All right, cool, I'll buy it. But developers could then say, oh, cool, I could write my software to make and have an inexpensive platform to work on it. But so I definitely took the stance of never wanting to work with a company that would do it that way. I don't, generally speaking, I stay away from thieves and liars. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Whether it's a company or a person, the same thing. Doesn't matter to me. So I wanted to ask, I saw a video of you a while back playing guitar. So it was the flamenco style guitar, right?
It is.
That is very hard to play, especially if you're like me and you're used to playing with a pick and, just a regular electric guitar. How did you get started with that?
Yeah. Well, think I grew up in Andalusia, in the south of Spain,
Oh.
where flamenco is very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guitar at home, and my father said that that it is important to play guitars, and he didn't mention the chicks, but he should have. Yes. But I really started playing when I went to live to Ireland. It was it's also kind of a way of keeping your roots,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose. I know I have never tried playing an electric guitar, and I have heard that for the electric guitar it is difficult to control the sound, to be like for an acoustic guitar it is difficult to get the sound out, to get the volume.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for the electric you have to be careful because it just sounds.
Yeah, I mean, and the hardware you use completely changes everything. It gets complicated. That's why I'm very lucky that for recording now, you could just plug into, I don't know if anybody would be able to see it, but I got one of the best interfaces I've ever used. Now it's probably not on camera, but it's you get a good interface. I have the Motu, and you're able to record directly into this. Just make sure, and you don't even really need to worry about clipping anymore, because if you record in a higher bit rate, you could even lower the waveforms, and then after the recording's done, then you could either output it to an amp, or you could use software to do it. But basically, for the past over 5 years now, you could just concentrate on the performance and get a really good performance, and then worry about the sounds later. Do it however you want it. Do it easy. Do it the right way. Whatever. But so that's very lucky. Whereas with acoustic, if you're recording that, however you mic that acoustic guitar, that's it. That's all you get. You can't really do too much. So as far as recording goes, it's much harder to record with an acoustic from that point of view.
It is, and I have I don't know how they call it in English, whether they call it a pick. I have a connection, a mic connection in one of my guitars, but it just doesn't sound like the guitar at all. It completely changes the tone of it. It sounds like a different instrument. So you need a real microphone.
Yeah. Pickups are good if you're playing live. Then you just got to get a decent amp. But I'm talking for acoustic, of course. But miking the guitar is always the better way to do it, and it's challenging.
It is. Yes. Yeah. And one thing I like about playing the guitar is that it connects me to people who are very different from the people I usually deal with. Mm-hmm. Like you can imagine that in my office, everyone has a very similar background. Like everyone went to either, to the physics school or engineering school, studied the same things, maybe went to work to the same places. So we are all very similar in the way we think about other stuff too. Whereas when you get to when you go to play music with other people, then it just opens up a lot. And I get people with very different life experiences and that think very different. That sometimes they actually feel like coming from another world. And I suppose that it might be the same for them. That they think, why is this guy behaving like this? And so that's one thing I really like about playing the guitar with more people.
Yeah, I found that with both music and with video games, especially with the retro stuff, you could have similarities and connections, and age doesn't matter, where you grew up doesn't matter, other things in your life doesn't matter. You could disagree about everything else, but if you have two friends that are playing music together or playing video games together that both like the song and the game, it's very cool. I always use the term, I know it's a little cheesy, but I always like to say it does make the world feel like a smaller place, and I always enjoyed that. I love the fact that I get to talk to people from all around the world about this stuff, and it doesn't matter what language you're speaking. Music is the same to everybody, and these electronics are the same. It's all,
Yes.
it's
a common thing. Yes, it's it's true that sometimes with video games or music you don't have the local variety, and then that may feel like it's like you are losing something, but you are gaining something which is great. That is that you can connect very quickly with someone from the other side of the world, because you both played Mario or or even or you both watch Friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, and now you have, you can say these things. What was that? Like, we were on a break, so you can say that kind of thing, and it will resonate in other people's minds too.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. It's fun it's funny that you have both of those things in your life now. You have that connects you all over the world, but that still roots you back in where you grew up with the music and your day-to-day job. It's fun. I always appreciate how stuff like that works. I also liked how you said bringing guitar to Ireland made you feel like you were bringing a piece of home with you. I didn't realize it, but I there was a couple times that I'd been on these long trips to Asia where I ended up bringing my acoustic guitar to play, and I just did it to fill the time when I knew I was going to have some downtime between projects out there. But in hindsight, it was kind of bringing a piece of me with me around it.
Yes.
It was also pretty funny sitting on the floor at the airport in China because they just, they saw an American with a guitar and just assumed that I was a professional musician. And here I am playing some In Flames songs on an acoustic guitar, and people are going by listening. Like, it was pretty funny. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a really fun conversation, really interesting. We definitely got to do it again at some point in the future, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I hope it's been interesting for the audience.
Yeah, I think it will be. So you're active on Twitter. You're also, you have your Patreon. Are there any other social media sites that people should look for you on, or forums or anything like that?
Not much, actually, not much. Well, it is the Discord that is linked to my Patreon, but the main channel is open. So it's public to anyone. And that's it. I have a Facebook and an Instagram accounts, but I don't really use them much. It's on Twitter where I post most of the stuff.
Yeah, same here actually. Okay, I'll make sure to have links to all of that in the description. And of course, anybody that uses the standard updaters and your updater can get your cores, and then you just have to find the ROMs wherever people normally find ROMs. So
yes,
cool.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much, and we will all talk to you again soon.
Thank you.